This is Amud Yomi, Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Tezvav and Beis. We're in the middle of discussing when was the Gezira made on Eretz Amim, on Chutz La'aretz, and on Klei Zchuchas. We had a kasha, because we quoted back in Daf Yudal that Yosi ben Yoezer and Yosi ben Yochanan Ish Yushalayim made these Geziras that the land of Chutz La'aretz is Tameh, as well as glass utensils, Klei Zchuchas. The kasha was that we quoted a brisa which taught us that these were Geziras made during the 80 years prior to the Churban, and we proved that Yosi ben Yoezer and Yosi ben Yochanan lived earlier. So says the Gemara, and with that we concluded in the previous year on the top of Tezvavim Beis, that indeed there were two levels of the Gezerah. There was a first Gezerah that was made on the Gusha. They made a Gezerah on the land, the earth itself, that if it touches Truma, it has to be burnt. And then, but they did not make the Gezerah on the Avira, and that was made later during those 80 years. Ask Gemara Lamemra, do you mean to say the Chad Gezerah Havil Isreifa, that there was one Gezerah, the first Gezerah was to burn the Truma? But says the Gemara, Vamer Elfa, but Elfa taught us, Yadayim Tchilas Gezerah, and Lisreifa. Yadayin, the original decree, was for burning. However, from the statement of Elfa, we see that only when it comes to Yadayim, only when it comes to tummy hands touching the Truma, that's when we say that the Truma is Tumah to the extent that it must be burnt. But clearly, that's a special din on Yadayim. But other things like the Gusha, like the land of Chutz La'aretz, clearly doesn't have this din. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. We're holding on to Tezvavim and Beis, 6 lines down. Also, Yinu Yosi ben Yoezer, Yosi ben Yochanan. They came Gazer Agusha Litlis. They made a Gezerah on the Gusha, on the land of Chutz La'aretz. If it touches Truma, Litlis. It's Tamei Misafek, but you don't burn it yet. Va'avira like klum. They didn't say anything about the airspace of Chutz La'aretz. And what do they say? They made a gezerah on the gusha, on the land, the next level, to burn it. Va'avira was a satin tumah d'Rabbanan litzla. He says, Marvakati, ba'usha gazur. Says the Gemara, 1 second. But it was much later when the Sanhedrin was in Usha that they made the gezerah on the Chutz La'aretz. How do we know that? Now she's just Sarvin as a Truma for 6 cases of Safek. We burn Truma al Safek Beis Abras. On Safek of a Beis Abras. A Beis Abras is a plowed area that you don't know if there was any Kvarim, if there were any dead corpses there. It's a Safek. On a suffix of land that came from Chutz La'aretz, the clothing of an Amaretz, which we know they were not makbid on Tumah V'Taira. Kelim and Imsam, and suffix of Kelim that are found, Valsafik Erukan of the spit, Valsafik Meiraglai Adam, the urine of a person, Shekinegin Meiraglai and Behema, that is opposite an animal. Al-Vadayin, if any of these items, we know for sure they came from this area of Tumah, Magayin, if they touch Truma, then what? Shu Safik Tumasan, which is the case of Safik Tumah, Seifin is that Truma, will burn the Truma. Reb Yosi Omer, Af al Safik Magayin, B'Shasayachid, then yes, Sharfin, But B'Rachama, B'Shasayachid, Toilin, it's a Safik. So we see that what do we see? We see that this din of Tumah and Eretz Amim, this din of Tumah and Chutz La'aretz came when? Came in Usha. Not originally by Yosi ben Yoezer and Yosi ben Yochanan Ish Yushalayim, and not during the 80 years prior to the Churban. So says the Gemara, we have 3 conflicting braisais. We have this brais that said it was the Tekana in Usha. We had our brais that said it was Yosi ben Yoezer and Yosi ben Yochanan. And we have the original braisa, not the original, but the one we quoted yesterday in the interim, that said it was during the 80 years. So says the Gemara as follows. Ella, we have to answer that the following was the sequence of events. Asi enu. They came, who's they? This is Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan Ish Yushalayim. We're about 15 lines to the end of the Amud. The first one line is Ba'usha. They came and Gazer Agusha Litlais. They made a gzir that the land of Chutz La'aretz Litlais. The halacha is that if truma touches it, it's a safek. Va'avira loiklam. V'aser rabbanan d'shmani shana. And they bumped everything up one level, not two like we thought before. And gazer idividi litlois. And they bumped up that the airspace of Chutz La'aretz also creates a safek. It's taila ve'asa. Ba'usha, and then an Usha came along, and they said, Gazur, Agusha Lisraif. They made a Gezerah on the Gusha, on the land, Lisraif. So that was a third Gezerah that happened, that on the land is Lisraif. Va'avira kedekai kai. But the airspace, they didn't add anything on, so it's still a suffix. So originally, we thought that the Gezerah of the Shmainim Shana bumped up both the Gusha to burn, the land to touch the earth to burn, and the airspace as a suffix. Says the Gemara, no. During those 80 years, they just bumped up the din of the airspace, that it's a suffix. And then later on in Usha, they came along and made another takana that the Gusha, that the land itself, if it touches Truma, then it has a din of Sreifa. Continues the Gemara with the second part of the Braisa that we are quoting, which is what? Kli Chuches. There were two decrees that we quoted from Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan Ish Yushalayim. One was on the airspace, which we just dealt with extensively, and the second one was on the Kli Chuches. Says the Gemara, we're 10 lines to the bottom of Tezvav, and the base first line is Kli Chuches. My time Gazu be Rabbanan Toma. What is the reason Rabbanan said that it is Mikabel Toma? Since, where does glass come from? It originally comes from sand. It is the same dinim as Kli Chares, and therefore, just like Kli Chares are Mikabel Toma midaraisa, so too midrabanan, glass has the same din. Ask the Gemara Lameata, lo tentaras v'mikva. If it's true that we're equating glass with a Kli Chuches, so then it shouldn't work to put this glass item in the mikvah to be mitayirit. Alo matinan. Why have we learned? Ve'elu chaitzim bekelim. The following items is a chatzitza on a keli, a zevis v'amar, pitcher musk, be'Kli Chuches. So if the Braisa list items which are chatzitza on a glass item, clearly you could put glass in the mikvah. But says the Gemara, if we're learning glass from Kli Chares, you should have no tire in the mikvah. Answers the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskinan. What are we dealing with over here as we conclude the Amud? That the glass item had a hole and it's no longer usable. And you plugged up that hole with a piece of lead, making the item usable again. When do we say that the item could be mitaher in a mikvah? Is when it's only a utensil due to the avar, the lead, plugging it up. Titania Kli Chuches shenikvoi vehitiv l'teichen avar amri shobing leo Rabbi Meir mitaher Rabbi Chachamim mitarin. According to Rabbi Meir, it is tamei and it needs to go into the mikvah, or better yet, it could go into the mikvah because the din of matachas like the avar. Whereas according to the Chachamim, it's not going to have a din of a kli due to the avar, due to the lead that's plugging up its hole, and therefore it is a tar, just like a broken utensil. So the Gemara sticks that there is a good equation between a glass utensil and an earthenware utensil. The only time it can go into the mikvah is when it's plugged up with this lead.